Bun găsit, eu sunt Radu Mihalache și bine v-am regăsit la un nou interviu din cadrul Festivalului de Muzică Veche București. Astăzi am alături de mine una dintre vedetele festivalului, un important lutist și chitarist, membru al mai multor grupuri interesante. Este vorba despre Xavier Díaz-Latorre. It's a great pleasure to have you here with me. Is this your first time in Bucharest?
No, it's my third time already.
Yes. And how do you feel here with the audience?
It's a very warm audience, very welcoming, and they appreciate. They are very silent. It's a beautiful audience.
How did you get into music? What's your beginning? What was the moment that made you say, oh, I want to make music?
Well, music was in my life, in my family, not as a professional musicians, but my grandfather, he played guitar himself, and I was always curious about. But it was when I was 13 when I finally decided to study guitar, and I got one, and I started, first with folk, with rock, but very soon I went to the conservatory and I started my studies there.
So let's say the plucked instruments were in your DNA, more or less, you loved them. But when did you make the switch to early music instruments?
Yeah, this is a long story. I did my whole career with classical guitar in Barcelona. Then I moved to Basel because I know that there was living one of my most beloved musicians, which was my teacher, Hopkinson Smith, who was one of the most important lute players, maybe the most important for all of us because everybody has studied with him. And I knew he was there, and I wanted to reach him, but it was a problem. That 30 years ago, it was difficult to get an instrument in Spain, to get an early music instrument. So there is a lot of guitar players who wanted to study lute, but we couldn't afford the instrument. And even if we could afford the instrument, we didn't know which one exactly: Baroque lute, Renaissance lute, vihuela. It was everything expensive, difficult. But I knew I wanted to do something about that. So I went to Basel because I knew he was there, but I couldn't get into his class because I didn't play the lute yet. So I did another thing, which was studying guitar there with Oscar Gilla, another amazing teacher I had in my life. And once I finished with Oscar Gilla, I had the opportunity of renting a lute at the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis in Basel, and then I started studying with Hoppe.
How is Hopkinson Smith as a teacher? Because we all know him as a performer more.
Well, I think performer, teacher, and person is a bit the same thing. I mean, he's a very curious and generous man who likes to share his curiosity, and he likes to potentiate your own deepness and your own. He doesn't try you to play like him. He just try to awake you something inside of you, which for me is the most important in a teacher. So I can say that I have learned a lot from him. When I was there, before as well, and after.
You said that back in the day it was difficult in Spain to get hold of early music instruments. How is it nowadays? Because you also teach.
Now it's much, much easier because now I am teaching at the SMUC, which is the University for Music in Barcelona. And this school didn't exist when I was young. And we didn't have even the speciality of early music instruments. Maybe just some harpsichord, some flute, but no viola da gamba, no lute, no historical instruments. So now we have the possibility with this school, which is very big, has something like 250 teachers. And this school allows you to learn, besides the classical music, you can also learn early music, rock, traditional music, flamenco, and jazz. Besides also composition and management and all these kind of things which are related with the music. So nowadays it's very easy for a musician in Barcelona to study, for instance, classical guitar, and as a secondary instrument to rent or to take borrowed an instrument from the school, like a baroque guitar or theorbo or lute, and so that they can try and they can do parallel the classical guitar and the early music instrument.
So you have many options nowadays. You play many instruments. How many exactly?
I mean, I should count them. I don't know. There are a lot, it's true. I play from the beginning, meaning chronologically, I play medieval guitar. Then from the Renaissance, I play vihuela. I have 3 vihuelas. I play Renaissance lute. I have 2 lutes. I play also Renaissance guitar. Then I play from the Baroque time. I play Baroque guitar, I have 3 guitars. I play Baroque lute, I play theorbo, and I play archilute. And I also play Romantic guitar, which I have 2 of them.
So it's a vast array. Do you have a favorite one?
I like all very much. It depends on the music, you know. It's when you are a pluck instrument player, actually you see any instrument, you can see a balalaika, you can see an oud, or you can see whatever which has strings that can be plucked, and you feel already from the family. So it's just a matter of dedication and motivation in terms of music.
So you feel them the same way. It's not
more or less, with all the respect and to the difficulty of every art form, but yeah, it's close to me.
And it depends on each repertoire that you want to take part in. You are part of many groups. You've been part and you collaborate with many artists. Which group, besides your own, Labyrinthos Ingeniosos, is your favorite one?
Well, I could say with the instruments, I have to play with all my colleagues because one always learns something from everybody, and I have the chance of playing with amazing colleagues, amazing musicians. But I play the most with the ensembles of Maestro Jordi Savall, with Sperium 21, La Capella Reial de Catalunya, and Concert des Nations. And this is the groups where I am playing the most besides mine and my solo activity.
Mm-hmm. How did the Labyrinthos Ingeniosos come to be? How did the group start?
It was a very curious start. It was a bit of coincidence, because inside of the groups of Mr. Savall, I met my friend Pedro Esteban, the percussion player, who is regularly playing with Savall in the last 30 years. And Mr. Savall asked us several times to play a couple of pieces. And it was always so beautiful, it was always so successful as well, you know, that we decided, why don't we try to do something by our own? And I started investigating the repertoire about Sanz, this composer. And I created a whole program, and then we put it together with Mr. Esteban, and we recorded it. And how do we call our ensemble? Okay, I was searching what is our philosophy. Our philosophy is about improvisation, recomposition, reconstruction. So why don't we call it Labyrinthos Ingeniosos, which is what Gaspar Sanz uses to teach you how to compose and how to improvise your own pieces. So that's a bit the story.
It's a bit of a manierist name,
exactly.
But it's great. Actually, that was how I discovered your playing with that disc, music by Gaspar Sanz. What is your favorite recording from what you've done so far?
You know, every recording is picturing a part of my life, my biography, and I couldn't say that this is better than this, but I could say that every one of them illustrates a part of my life that I consider very important. I mean, for us, records are one of our highest achievements, not in terms of profession, but just in terms of projects. You know, you get very deep into one project, and then you recorded it, and this is the sun of this time. No, so every one of my sons, I love them very much, and every one of them has some part of me. I am particularly proud about the records of the complete works of Guerau. Guerau is a composer which is sadly still too unknown by the modern musicians, and for me is no doubt one of the best, if not the best, composer for guitar. So I encourage the people to study his music and to listen to his music, because it's really very interesting to get to know.
Well, he somehow completes the great triangle of guitar composers from the Baroque, Santiago de Murcia, Gaspar Sanz, and Guerau.
Absolutely.
talking about parts of your life. You've been here in Bucharest, you've played Stolen Roses, but you're now going to record those Stolen Roses. How is that project going?
Yes, Stolen Roses is, it's a project which is about one of the most famous practice on the Baroque time, which was the transcription. It was very normal that a musician who played one instrument and fancied to play some other piece which was not for his instrument, take it and adapt it for his own instrument. So what I did with this program is to take all this music, or part of the music that I like very much from other instruments, mostly for violin, and one of them for cello, which Bach himself transcribed for me. And I made my own version of all the violin music, and then I adapted it for the lute. And I like to think that every instrument has a garden, which is its own repertoire. And every garden we have flowers which are more beautiful than others, and mostly roses are one of them. So I pick some of the roses of the forbidden gardens, and I did my own choice of roses.
What are your, let's say, every early musician has to research before he does that. What are, in your opinion, the main sources which a guitar player or a lute player should explore before starting to play?
I mean, I think we have to play parallel to the research. I mean, I don't think that we do something before and then we play. But if we mean in terms of creating a repertoire or creating a new program, there are all the music by the composers for those instruments that we have to know, which are there. But for me, it's much more important to know what is on the repertoire of early music, which is not for guitar, for the lute. So I think that vocal music, instrumental music, it's very important for our education and for our sensitivity. So in order to achieve great things with the lute, I think that it's very interesting that one gets to know how the music can sound with other instruments, and particularly with the voice. And this will help us to develop a sensitivity in terms of melody, in terms of rhythm, that afterwards we can also use on our instruments.
So it's again a sense of knowing the other musicians, knowing the whole universe, rather than being you by yourself and exploring
Absolutely.
music.
For me, it's very important to play with others. It's one of the most important things. Actually, one of the things who made me change to early music when I was 20-something was the fact that with the classical guitar, it was so difficult to play with other people, because the repertoire for classical guitar is very limited. We have some good pieces, but not that many. And with the early music instruments, we can play from duet till orchestra, with all the formations in the middle, duo, trio, quintet, quartet, everything. And you can play church music, opera, chamber music. So it is so rich and such high quality that I think it's one of the most important things in my life I did, is to go into the early music in order to play with other people.
Because you also get to be a part of the continuo group, not only solo or I don't know.
Absolutely. Let's say continuo is this practice which was developed after 1600, which is the accompaniment in a certain way to the melodies, but also before the continuo we had just the accompaniment, which was the intabulations of madrigals or songs where we could accompany the singers following the rules of the counterpoint. All this make the music education much more complete.
It's very interesting that thinking about it, the lute and the guitar was actually one of the earliest well-tempered instruments before the harpsichord and before Bach.
Let's say that what do we mean with well-tempered? This is very important because you know the temperaments, as you know, it can be equal temperament, yes, which is what we use in the last 100 years. But before that, there was a lot of different temperaments, and very often I wonder about the translation of the well-tempered, because in German it's the wohltemperiert Klavier, which for me it means more than beautifully tuned than well-tuned, because for nowadays for us well-tuned is just okay, it shouldn't be out of tune. Yeah. But wohltemperiert for me sounds nice for the ears. And according for every repertoire, for every style, we use a different temperament. And of course, the lute allows you to use the certain amounts of temperaments because we can move the frets. Nowadays, with the classical guitar, the frets are fixed, so we are forced to play in equal temperament. Sorry. But in the old times, we can move the frets, so we can adjust the semitones to the key we are playing in a specific way, historical way.
So it was, let's say, a more diverse way of looking at music.
Absolutely, especially if you do all the instruments, because I guess that if you were Weiss, Silvius Lepos Weiss, playing lute in the 18th century, the end of the 17th, beginning of the 18th century, one played in that way, and one played this instrument and one note about this music. Nowadays, we want to take all the range from medieval till 1750, which I think is too much for us. And then we have to know a lot of everything, which sometimes results in knowing very little about everything. So this is one of our handicaps.
In your other concert in Bucharest, you'll be playing with Andrew Lawrence King, the great harp player. And you'll have a repertoire that brings to the audience those three great composers that we talked about earlier. How did this idea come to be? How did you choose this music?
Well, as you said, they are the three most important composers for guitar of the 17th century. So I think it's nice to have a representation of what does it mean, the guitar in the 17th century. And normally we don't have repertoire for harp. So normally what harp does is to also adapt and play repertoire for guitar and repertoire for keyboard. So what we are doing is just an historical essay of what it could be to have a guitar and a harp playing together, the same repertoire. Sometimes Mr. Andrew Lawrence King is going to accompany me. Sometimes it's me accompanying him. Sometimes we will be both improvising. So it's a very alive way of presenting this music.
By playing us pieces by Don Santiago de Murcia, you'll also be bringing us Baroque music from the New World. Is that right? As far as I know.
Yeah, there is a large discussion about that. His book, Saldivar Codex, was found in Mexico, in Guanajuato, and it contains a couple of pieces which we could say which come from the New World. With the studies, they have found that probably Santiago de Murcia, he was never in Mexico. So, but it's more about the dancers going and coming back to the New World and from the New World. And in one of these trips, on some of these trips, I'm sure that a lot of this music influenced by African music and Native American music came back to Spain, and we developed also new dances upon that. So we have these two pieces, Arambeques and Cumbes, that we are playing tomorrow, and Los Imposibles, which they are probably bringing from the New World some rhythms. And what we do is that since all these chords that from the guitar, for guitar, are normally, they have a lack of information. They just bring the notes and the rhythm. But we don't have the flavor, and we don't have the feelings, and we don't have what we call very often in Spain el tumbao or el duende. It's the kind of charm which makes every rhythm special, let's say. That would be the translation. So if we want to know, we cannot know. So what we have to do is we go to the Latin American folklore, and since it is a folklore which is directly related from what it came from Spain in 17th century, in 16th, 17th century, we dig there and we try to rescue some of the rhythms that they are still today alive, and we use them on our music in order to make this music alive, because if not, this music will be dead, it will be just the notes. And so we try to reconstruct and make them alive again. In order to do that, we use these alive rhythms, and we also improvise our own improvisations, which makes the music more or less what it was at the time.
Well, once again, that brings us to a discussion that early music, it's a very modern type of music. It's very alive, not something written in stone and that's it, we can't do anything about it. One question about, you'll be playing the Baroque guitar, am I right? How were the strings aligned? Because I imagine it's not like on the classical guitar.
No. The big difference between the early instruments and the guitars after 19th century is that normally the strings were gathered in pairs. So we have normally pairs of strings, except some of them. In this case, for instance, the first one is single, but the other 4 are double. And we have only, let's say, 5 courses. We call courses this pair of strings because sometimes we have single strings, sometimes it's double, sometimes even 3 strings in one course. So in order not to be saying one is single and the other is double, the other is triple, we say, okay, there are courses. So this is a 5-course guitar in contraposition with the modern guitar, which is 6-course guitar, but they're all single. So let's say we add a 6th course in the modern guitar that we don't have on the Baroque guitar. And in the Baroque guitar we have the first string is single, the second is double, and the third is double, the fourth as well, but the tuning is high, it's not low. And then the fifth is also double, but it's also high, it's not low, which make a different, I mean the positions work the same, but the sound is higher, because we don't have the low notes that we have on the modern guitar.
Oh, so it's somewhat like some soprano plucked instruments like the ukulele or I don't know, which have also some higher...
Exactly. This is called re-entrant tuning. And this normally is used to play a kind of scales which are called campanellas, bells, which instead of playing a scale which starts on the lower string and go up to the higher string, they combine the strings, since they are more or less in the same high, they combine the strings, and since they are still sounding, they make this effect of a bell, therefore it's called campanella.
That's great. Well, I would like to ask you, what would be your principal advice for a young guitar player who's thinking about switching to lute, to Baroque guitar? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, I wouldn't think in terms of switching, but in making it wider. So if we are guitar players, we'll never stop being guitar players. And one of the fears of the guitar players is that normally guitar players play with nails, fingernails. And there is the conception that lute is only possible without nails. Okay, lute is possible to play with nails and without nails, historically talking. Also Baroque guitar and also theorbo. So that wouldn't be something which should be a problem. And what I would like to suggest is that they should maybe listen as much as music as they can, in order to know what is the music which fits better with your own soul, and then try to get the instrument. If we cannot afford this instrument, then there are schools like the one where I'm teaching, where one can go there and one can borrow the instrument. And this makes the things much easier in order to try.
So you're saying that it's not a problem to go from classical guitar to lute and back again. Like I've talked with other instruments like oboe, and they say you should choose a side because it's difficult to make the switch.
It depends of the degree of proficiency. If you want to be the best Baroque oboe player, then you have, of course, to play only the Baroque oboe. But it's not something that we lose. It's just as a matter of muscles. So we learn how to use the muscles with the Baroque oboe. But if we should go back to the Baroque modern oboe, we just have to train the muscles again. So it's not that we lose everything we got. But for me, of course, if one is doing lute and he wants to do it in a professional way, it will have to be more focused on the lute for a while. But it's true that sometimes we have the thought that it is closer, the vihuela, which is this Renaissance guitar, is closer the vihuela to the theorbo than the theorbo to the classical guitar. And I'm not that sure about that. Because theorbo is a big instrument with a lot of tension in the strings and with single courses, which is very close to guitar, actually. And vihuela is softer, it's double strings, it's smaller. So I'm not sure if we can say that the oboe is closer to the vihuela than to the modern guitar. So I think that there are some choices that one can do, which could be easier to afford having a certain amount of instruments at the same time.
Javier, it was a great pleasure to have you here with us, talking about this great music and this great universe. And we hope to see you soon back in Bucharest and to listen to your Stolen Roses recorded.
My pleasure, mulțumesc.
Și eu vă mulțumesc că ne-ați urmărit. Eu sunt Radu Mihalache și vă aștept din nou să fiți alături de noi la interviurile Festivalului de Muzică Veche București.